Our speaker today is Mahesh Babu. He was the former VP of Information Assurance and at Kodem. Now he's leading the growth at Kodem for venture-backed application security. Before that, he worked for HSBC. I think it's in Chicago, right? Where he scaled and built out their global application security, identity access management. And then he began his career at Purdue University's Information Assurance Security Research Center. It's a great school, by the way. I know because I went there. And, he has a very diverse background that blends academic rigor and enterprise startup execution. So let's give a warm welcome to Mahesh from Kodem.
Wait, did you actually go to Purdue? Boiler up? Well, thank you, everyone. It's the nicest introduction I've got. But big thank you. Can you hear me okay? Alex, you're right. Super sensitive mic. Mahesh Babu, Kodem Security. We're a venture-backed application security startup. That's all I'll say about us. If you want to learn more, there's some literature there. Our website, kodemsecurity.com. Chris, our top salesman's here. You can ask him or you can ask me after this call. The only thing I'll say about this, because it leads into this presentation, is how many of you have an iPhone? All right. How many of you have heard of Pegasus? Right. I work for the founders of Pegasus. Work for the people who created Pegasus. Right. They're the ones who started this company when everything started becoming a little controversial. They left the NSO group and took with them some of the principles that built the company that Chris and I work for. Another poll real quick. So the purpose of this presentation is, I'll tell you a little story. About a third of our customer base now uses one of the AI code editors. So think Cursor, Claude Code, OpenAI Codex, GitHub Copilot, and so on. 3 of them within a week came to us and said, our CTO or our VP of engineering is shifting all of engineering to this new thing. What do you think about it? What are some of the security issues? What code is it bringing in? What kind of dependencies are it bringing in? How is it going to change the security posture? And we're like, good question. We don't know. But what we'll do is assign one of our security researchers to join the bug bounty program for each of these. And within a month, we had some findings. Specifically, the findings I can talk about right now were disclosed to Anthropic as part of Claude Code. And they've accepted it. They've made the remediations. And we are allowed to talk about it publicly. There's 17 we found so far. I'm talking about 2. That's the context. How many of you use one of these AI code editors on a day-to-day basis? Any particular favorites? Claude Code? Cursor? Okay. So some of these I'll show you in Claude Code. And anyone who has just tried it or played around with it? Okay. Anyone on the bug bounty programs of any of these? All right. And I will also preface this by saying the Anthropic security team is probably the best security team in the States, right? So everything I say here is we see ourselves as partners with them. We are augmenting them. We're helping them. The pace at which they fix things that are found, and it's usually when they find something, that whole class gets remediated. It's second to none. Jason Clinton, if you don't know, their now deputy CISO was the CISO for the last 3 years. He's still there. Fantastic speaker. Amazing. You learn, you take pages of notes every time you hear him speak. So that is a world-class organization. We know they're head of GRC as well. It is an amazing security organization. So the goal is not to dunk on them. The goal is to showcase that we all play a part. We all have to help them make this very, very highly scaling, fast scaling, large user base code editor, robust for us to use so we can use it in our organizations. Okay. Any questions before I get started? And I will be fumbling between presentation and the terminal to show you some of the vulnerabilities. So if it gets messy, let me know. Stop me for questions, sir.
Yeah, and sorry. Just real quick, I forgot to mention that for those that are online, we're doing the polling questions. So Tim is online and just asked if you can mention when you want to have them run those.
Okay.
During this. That'd be great.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So maybe it might be good, Tim, to run the first one, because the first question is how many use who uses these code editors? Since we asked the question in the room, why don't we put that up? Okay. If you're wondering what the ducks are doing in the presentation, that's not our usual presentation, cover slide, but we use it for all our management meetings. So my first meeting every morning is the company leadership meeting. It's at 5 o'clock Pacific, 5 a.m. Pacific, because half the team is in Israel. Our CEO puts the slide up and says, we're over here. The goal is to get to the other side. If anyone's read Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, like that's the challenge he's put to us, is the day we're $1 billion run rate company, we'll all be on the other side. And it's up to us to figure out how to get there.
So Dave, I need to get promoted to co-host.
Good question for our founders. Why did the chicken cross the road? Chickens can't swim. All right. This is the generic side. I don't think we need to go through this very quickly. But this stuff is getting used. You looked around. That's why I do the poll. Why did we even care about this? We're a startup. We're very efficient with our spend and very conscious about where we put our engineers and researchers' time. So why do we assign a full engineer to look at this researcher to look at this full time? This, and a third of our customers asked us to. Second, why is it still being used? It's getting generally the code generation is getting better, but more than that, if you talk to engineers who use this on a day-to-day basis, they are generally, even if they're not getting productive by whatever metric you want to use, they are feeling like they're getting more productive. Right? There's certain mundane scaffolding, scripting, code refactoring things that generally get a little less painful, which is generally the key to any great product, is you make that little mundane thing better, or you make it go away. And this seems to be doing that. It's getting used. Any questions in general? So why this is seeing mass adoption, and it's starting to get very sticky with engineering teams we work with, at least. And that's why we care about this. That's why we're assigning a full-time security researcher to look at this stuff. Any questions there?
So I launched it.
Okay. So seems most of you know how this works, but I'll baseline, like, what is the threat model? Like, how does this thing work? How does it generate code? You can prompt it. I'll use Claude Code. You can prompt Claude Code. It looks like a terminal. I think a couple of days ago, they released a browser version too. I haven't looked at it. Yeah. I haven't tried that yet, so you can chime in. What's that? Oh yeah, we can't hear you.
Okay, they released a sandboxing for a couple of features of the
browser
cloud
version.
Yeah.
Haven't tried it, so this is all the command line terminal version. So you can, it looks like a command line. You're tempted to use, like, when you're used to working on a command line, used to working with a terminal. The number of times I've tried to, like, I've just automatically tried to just write a Unix command when you could just speak to it in English. It messes with your mind a little bit. And sometimes if you just put in a Unix command, I'll show you in a second, it takes longer, and it's frustrating. because if you run that same command on a command line, it runs like this. Claude Code will actually process it like a prompt, it'll give you a chain of thought, and then actually produce the same, which is kind of annoying. But in general, it's meant to say, like, instead of saying chmod minus rwx blah, or instead of asking you starting to write code, import whatever pytorch.h and start writing stuff, you can do what you do with ChatGPT. Ask it to write a program to do X, or ask it to create a function that reverses a linked list. Whatever you want, right? It's a natural language prompt where you can prompt it like you would be like an engineer would. It comes up with a code suggestion. And it also, this is why we care about it as an application security company, it also pulls in dependencies, right? So it will write a piece of code. It'll also import things off of import things off of GitHub. It'll import libraries. So if you ask it to create a transformer based like AI application that's based on a transformer, it's going to import PyTorch. If you ask it to create a web, a front end that renders a certain types of color, it's going to import a particular library. Oh, by the way, if you're writing it in Python, if you're writing it in Node, it could import a library that was part of the NPM worm breach. So this is one of those, like, the issues that we were worried about. What is it actually importing? Is it checking if it's a vulnerable version? Is it checking even if the library that is importing that is not vulnerable? Is that library using a library that has a vulnerability that is compromised, right? We care about that. So and then command generate, it can actually run Unix commands for you, which is the crux of what I'm going to talk about. Is there are permissions you can set. There are allow lists. You can allow it to run certain commands. You can tell it to ask you whether you want to run a command each time, or you can auto approve certain commands. Things that are like normal, safe, you can auto approve. Except Cursor has something called YOLO mode. You can guess what that is. And what are some of the controls? So the auto approval is one control. It's pretty easy to work around it. So that's one of the things. One of the things I'll show you is it's pretty easy to get around auto approval. There are allow lists. So Claude Code has a policy file called claude.md. So if you're, as part of your ISACA people here, for part of your internal controls testing, you want to know what the posture is, you want to do a risk assessment of AI code editors, ask for the claude.md file, right? That has the policy. And the policy could be, it is also a prompt. It could be free-form text. It could be a configuration file, like a YAML file, or it could be a set of Unix commands. It could be a shell script, but it could be a prompt. And we have seen breaches where, we have seen exploits where people can trick the claude.md file into getting Claude Code to do things. I can't talk about that yet, but, and I just realized we're being recorded. No, I'm kidding. You'll hear about it in a conference further down. So those are some of the controls. Like when you do your risk assessment, like those are some of the obvious controls that have to be in place. Make sure there's auto approval. Make sure there's an allow list. Claude.md is correctly documented. If it's Cursor, YOLO mode is turned off. YOLO mode means you run everything is run without any check. Commands, Unix commands, source code is run without any testing. Things are pushed directly to production. You don't want that. But it's there for early stage. You're just writing a quick proof of concept type application. You want to build an MVP and you want to get it out there as soon as possible. That's what YOLO mode is for. And I will tell you personally, when you're building something, if you get asked for checks every single time, it gets very, very frustrating. So I get it. That's what the auto approve looks like. You'll see it in the terminal in a second, but generally, like, unless you put something in the settings, every time you try to run a fairly sensitive Unix command. It'll make sure it'll ask you for your approval. It'll give you three options. It'll ask you if you want to proceed. It'll ask you if you want to auto approve going forward. That means if I hit option 2, every time I I change the permissions on a directory or a file, it'll not ask me if I meant to do that anymore. Or 3, you can tell it to suggest alternatives or do something different every time someone tries to do this. There's YOLO mode. I checked my cursor yesterday. It's not there anymore. So, but you can still get to it. Like you can remove you can add things to the allow list. You can do things to make it more YOLO mode, but thank God they took that out. Okay. Any questions so far on the threat model, on what the AI code editor is, how it works, and what are some of the basic controls that are in place?
Yeah, I have a question on how do you plug in the 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 cyber threat intelligence model into this particular thing? Because as you know, like the threat intelligence changes on a day-to-day basis, if not on hour-to-hour basis, right? Especially when writing the code and executing that code and testing that. So that's I consult for a biotech research company, and this is where we are finding it challenging to kind of plug in the current threat intelligence into your code base.
Good question. So my last slide is on that. I've answered shortly in 2 ways. One is there is Claude, like I said, Anthropic's security team is one of the best in the world. Almost immediately once we started, not just us, but other vendors in the space started surfacing these issues, they released something called a command called /security-review. So that will do a security test of any code that's generated by Claude Code, any code that the engineer is writing. And it will give you it'll get you like 70 to 80% of what a commercial code scanner will give you. Right. So that's one. Second, they do incorporate, I don't know how, so they have a threat intelligence team. So they work with the ISACs, and they continue to update their model that feed Claude Code accordingly. And the other place is they also update their model card. Every time they release a new version of the model, there's a model card that has a security section, review section. So any threat intelligence that any new pieces of malware, any malicious packages, any IOCs that they see that are specific to them, they disclose over there. Right? That's probably the model card is probably where you want to start. And there are a couple of blogs that the security team has. I'll point you to that at the end of the call. That's the short answer. It's /security-review and the model card. Okay. So we found 3 classes of vulnerabilities, 17 in all. I can talk about the first 2. I'm not allowed to talk about the 3, but I can tell you what type it is. It was a remote code execution. But the first 2 is one, we talked about auto approve. Our researcher found out a pretty easy way to bypass auto approve. And it's still there. So you have to get creative with how you prompt it, but you can still get it. So what do I mean by that? If you say you require approval to run a specific command, let's say chmod, let's say chmod requires you to approve. There's a way you can run chmod without getting my approval. So we'll talk about that. And second is he figured out a very simple way to crash a Claude Code session, execute a denial of service. That was, you will think it got to the point where they didn't want to call that a vulnerability because they're like, oh, okay, we can fix it. But the issue is limited to this session. It's like if you crash a session, it's just that session. And so the response back to us was like, start a new session. Like, yeah, but if you look at what the underlying issue is, it's it's just poorly written. It was that time poorly written code. Very simple lack of if anyone's done like very poor exception handling. So if you've done any Java coding, there's always if you have a try, you have a catch, right? And you have to know how an exception's handled. There was no exception handled, right? And we'll go through that. So they fixed it in their defense, so I can't reproduce that for you, but luckily our researcher made a video of him crashing that particular, running that exploit. So I'll show you a recording of that one, okay? And that's the screenshot of Cloud Code crashing. Right, so those are the two. Let's go on to the first one. All right, so we talked about what auto approval is, but I'll just refresh. It allows you to, if you want to go faster, there's a certain set of safe commands you're okay to run, Unix commands you're okay to run. You can auto approve it. It's pretty easy. There are two ways you can do it. You saw the prompt. You can tell Claude Code to auto approve the next time you run it. Option 2, or you can put it in your claude.md file and say there's a approval list. You can say approve these commands going forward. Right? It's meant to skip save things. It's also, if you're in a CI/CD pipeline, if you're writing this for production for production code base, you don't want the CI/CD pipeline to break every time a specific command is run, approved command is run, right? So it's meant for that. And let me show you what it actually does. I'm going to step away from the frame for just a second. Okay, people on Zoom, can they see my screen? Okay, I'll talk you guys through it. And what you'll see on the screenshot on the right-hand side of the screen is basically what I'm going to reproduce, right? So I'll give you an example. I wrote this. It's not actually a payload. It's just a simple script that prints that has a print statement in it. But I'm going to run this shell script, and every time I run this shell script, it should ask my permission. Okay. So this is if Claude Code has a sense of humor. Instead of saying it says this stuff. Okay, good. Run the script. See, and that's an update they made yesterday. Is before it would just ask me, do you want? Enchanting. This is part of the annoying thing I said. Like if you ran the script on a terminal, it would run it quickly. It's actually thinking, there you go. And now it's asking me, do I want to proceed? So it's asking for approval. It's not been auto approved. Okay, and I'm not going to auto approve it. Yes. That's what it's outputting. It says I'm running a scary command, and it's just dumping all the folder names on that in the folder that I'm in. Okay. Now there is a command called find, and replace find with any Unix command that allows you to execute arbitrary code. Right? We proved this with find. Find is just a directory traversal command. So if you want to list all the directories on your desktop, you have a messy desktop, you want to list all, that's what find is for. Or you want to look for a specific thing. For some, I don't fully understand the case. Like, I don't know why you would ever need to run a script as part of find, but let's say, okay, I'm going into this directory and I want to run this particular action on this directory. That's probably what it is, but it allows you to run arbitrary code. Find allows you to run arbitrary code. So I'm going to tell Claude Code to run that same command that requires my permission to run. I'm going to tell it to run it now, this way, using the find. There you go. It did the same thing. It didn't ask for my permission. So you're able to get around approvals just with a simple Unix command, and still hasn't been fixed. Right? Any questions on what I've shown so far, sir? Mike?
I assume the same thing applies to Echo, creating new files, doing that sort of thing. Yep.
Yes.
Is it, what do you mean by actually the auto running or whatever, auto code generation or running in execution? Is it like, does it implies like authorization, from a governance perspective already exist for that particular piece of, let's say, this is a part of a function, or this is part of a command, okay, or an asset which is a part of a process, okay. So what do you mean by like auto code execution? Because you imply auto code execution only if there is an authorization, especially both authorization and the authentication exist for that particular context, right? For the code execution and code generation and execution, right? So what exactly, what's the context of this auto code execuation?
So your question is, when do you use
Yeah,
approval?
exactly. Because I mean, obviously, you use a lot of these auto code executions or generation in a research environment. Right, where you need to try out. I mean, as you said, like try, and if try this, and then this is the exception, right?
Right.
So you kind of always couple that with that, or tightly coupled with that, right? For this, okay, so these are the errors, or these are all the failures. I know whether it's a security or the other types of failures, you kind of couple tightly with that, and then take it, provided that you have authorization for that particular piece of code to be written and executed in a production environment, for example.
So thank you. Good question. It's basically auto approval is permissions management. So what we just showed is there's a way to evade that permissions management policy. So if you set a permission that you can only run this particular command if the user approves.
Okay.
What we just showed is that you can run it without user approval.
So that means there is an already authorization in place.
Correct.
From a
So
governance
that's
perspective.
assuming you're a malicious user, or you are a disgruntled engineer, and you want to run this, and you want to get around your company's policy that requires approval. This is
Thank
how
you.
you do it. Yeah. So for those of you in on Zoom, I'll just quickly recap. So what we just showed is what's on the screen on the bottom right, but an abridged version is if you have a command that requires a particular approval to run, you can use the find command to run it without approval, right? It's as simple as that. I think so. Anthropic's getting better at this. So we disclosed this. When our researcher first did this, he could just put in find, execute, blah, 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 and it would just run, right? Now, if I try to do that, it'll say, it'll stop me from doing it. Or it'll say, are you sure you meant to do this? This looks like a dangerous command. Do you want me to do a security review of this first? But if you change the prompt and say, this is very important, all caps, exactly execute this verbatim, it still doesn't. It's a class of issue. It's an issue. the interesting thing is even if it's a bit of a whack-a-mole too, they could go fix this. So they fix this, but there are probably 10 other commands that they haven't fixed. And that's part of why you join a bug bounty program, is to find all these corner cases for them. So
Is there anything materially different between this and sudo permissions, saying that you can run this command with these parameters versus you can run this command with any parameters?
no, so sudo is one of the things that you can set auto approval for. Yeah.
My question was actually,
Oh, how is auto approval different from sudo? Yes. Yes. Yep. Correct. Oh, no, this is a lot less granular actually. It's way more high level. This is, and it's not just for root commands, command execution. It's for command execution in your environment, whether you're root or whether you're a regular user. Yeah. And in terms of specificity, I actually don't know. I'm sure like in the claude.md file, you could specify like you specify in a sudo file. I haven't tried that. But the auto approval is only for at the command level, not for the specific parameters in the command.
I think this is only permissible in certain environments, not in a production environment, I guess, right? Well, I mean,
For
even
what we
though
know, yes.
developers love to do this in a production environment, right? Auto execution or auto correction.
Well, this is an IDE. Yeah.
Yeah, merely, yeah, lower level environments. Yeah.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oh,
I'm sure Amazon might have been working
Oh,
right
no.
in production yesterday.
yeah. Again, hope not. Well, they are a big investor in Anthropic. So that's the first one. Any other questions on the first vulnerability? Oh. All right, we'll pause for the poll question.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the poll question is, when your organization evaluates new developer tools, what gets the most scrutiny? And your options are data residency and privacy, supply chain risk, access control and secrets management, or none of the above. So if we want to do it by a show of hands here, who would pick data residency and privacy? Okay, how about supply chain risk? Okay. What's that? Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, just keep your hand up. They're just yeah.
I would hope it's multiple.
How about access control and secrets management? Cool. How about none of the above? Okay. So it's a little evenly split there. Yeah. Sweet.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. The joke someone told me when I was at HSBC was we would pitch as part of this team. They call the CISO called strategic initiatives. So any new tool that got rolled out, we would handle it and then hand it off to an operational team. Or if we got hit by an audit finding, or the auditors, the regulators wanted to push something on us, it would get thrown to us. And so we pitched the projects to the CISO, and at one point he was like, "All right, guys, stop." He's like, "Have you heard of a risk register?" I'm like, "What is a risk register?" There are a list of risks. Risk equals likelihood times impact. some point as a CISO, I have a budget there and I draw a line in the risk register. Anything above the line gets fixed. Anything below the line, the business accepts the risk. So there are things you fix because there's money and because there's motivation. There's things that don't get fixed. You accept the risk and hope you have great cyber insurance. Okay. Second thing. This was a denial of service thing. So our researcher was able to crash a session with just a very, very simple malformed input. So path variable with an extra space crashed the session. So he just did an echo, path, open braces, path, space, close braces, and it crashed it. So let me show you him doing it. And he was able to run this both remotely as well as locally. And we'll talk about why that was an issue. Let me full screen it. Apologize for the grainy thing. There we go. There we go. So he did a or 1 = 1 there too, a SQL injection there too. So what happened there is a command with a simple malformed input got translated incorrectly. The parser that was translating the command was expecting a closed bracket, saw a space instead. That's an error. Didn't know how to handle the error, and threw an exception, pushed out an error, and then it went back up to the function that called it. That function didn't know how to handle the error, so that crashed, and eventually it just went into this infinite loop and crashed the session. Of course, they fixed this. This is a simple fix, except the underlying issue is the coding practice is, this is a simple input validation, simple exception handling, right? It's coding practice, and this is when you realize PhDs in computer science who've been, when you go look at the Stanford curriculum, look at the Berkeley curriculum, look at the Purdue curriculum, and Purdue, we were the first. We established the NSA Centers of Excellence. We established the idea for a Master's in Information Security. We are the first information security research institute in the world. How many computer security classes do you think we had in our undergrad 4-year program? That's it. 1. Yeah. And in most other good CS programs, you could choose not to take. Sir. All right. Which should scare you even more. That's exactly in there. Which probably means GitHub doesn't have less than 50% of GitHub doesn't have try catch. Oh my God. That's a scary way of looking at it, but that's absolutely right. So the point is they fixed this. Reality is the risk was very limited here because all it did was crash my session or the researcher's session, and you could spin back up another one, and they fixed it very quickly, right? But this is why. But the coding practice exists in other parts of their code base. The coding practice exists in more than 50% of GitHub. That's the issue, right? And that's why we spend the time we do on their bug bounty program. That's the thing. If you are bringing this into your organization, what you need to watch out for, because it may not be echo path space that causes the crash. It could be some other malformed input that hasn't been handled, right? So that the class of issue is the problem, the specific issue, not a problem. The good part is, again, Anthropic, best security team in the world. The moment if you join the bounty program, you run into this issue during a code review or during a security review, they will fix it quickly. I guarantee you that. Correct. Oh, wow.
What we found out was it's like an inverted question mark. Kind of a characters has been inverted kind of a question mark kind of a characters has been kind of introduced by another device which was hooked up onto this device. It's actually a train of devices. It's not just one like a comprehensive or a one integrated device, but a series of devices connected together to measure something from the patient's body. So one started kind of sending out this. I mean, this is a perfect example of how this like an agent swarm in a thing where it can one malfunctioning of one particular just one character can crash that entire chain of the train of the devices. And just wanted to share that with yeah.
That's a pretty cool example. And it goes to show that the cheapest place to fix that was in the high level source code. Right? And the more down the chain stack you go, the more
It
expensive.
took like a 4 months for us to really figure out the root cause where it's actually gets started.
Crazy. Well, there you go. Like simple bad coding practices can have those consequences, right? So I think we talked about this, what really happened there. But to me, what's amazing is how our researcher got to this is he reverse engineered. Of course, Cloud Code is not open source. It's you are shipped the binary and you're doing an npm install and you're running it on your terminal. He reverse engineered Cloud Code and tried to figure out like where the poor exceptional handling happened. Except you would think like he's an offensive security researcher. I'm like, did you use Hydra? Did you use binary? He's like, no, I used Cloud Code. He used Cloud Code to reverse engineer the Cloud Code binary. I did a pretty damn good job of it, right? And so this is not the actual code. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. This is our researcher reverse engineering it. And he thinks this is probably where that happened. This is the lowest level where the error could have been thrown. And obviously there's no handling there to fail safely. And because of that, this gets called recursively by another function. It gets called recursively by another function. Then blah, 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 blah. It crashes. So that's basically the lesson for this one. And he's closely watching this and trying to reproduce this in different places and just being like, I call him Anthropic's Roomba. Like he goes around their house, like cleaning up these little things and telling them about it. And they're very appreciative. Like that is the cool part about being on the vendor side now. It's like it's not competitive. It's like we're in this together because we know this tooling is a reality. Everyone's going to use it, whether the security works or not. So it's up to us to figure this stuff out now. And our customers asked for it too. So root causes, particular mitigations. I'll weight this like the weak error handling is probably the lowest hanging fruit if you're doing an audit. Like that's probably what you want to check first. You want to run some of these things first. But I'll start from the top. To like obvious. These things were built for speed. They were not built with security in mind. But the beauty of it is also like if you go look at apart from forward deployed engineer, the thing Anthropic is hiring for the most is security. OpenAI has just hired a GM for their security products division, right? So this is the whole Microsoft model of let's make money up on our own security issues. right? And that's create an ecosystem for other vendors to exist in that ecosystem. And so they're okay with that because their primary use case is getting developers to use as much of it as possible, as fast as possible. So do not trust the things by default. There is, I think in general, over trust and whitelists. The basic, my engineers would throw things at me if I said this, if I said the first bullet point over there. But that's probably, if you can't figure out what the issue is, like if there is something going on, like that's probably the first thing you want to do. But the real, having been yelled at by enough engineers in my time before I came over to the vendor side, the real thing to do is like co-create the Claude MD file, the policy file with your SRE, with your DevOps engineer, because they'll want to put some reliability stuff in there. They'll want to put some policy on like testing policy in there. So just build that file with them. That's one of our customers is doing that, and they're finding it's working, but there's obviously with every like version that comes out, they have to go back in. So the pain has gone from trying to fix specific things with this, or trying to just get coverage of where people are using these code editors and actually convincing them to put some security controls, to actually like making sure the policy file is up to date every time Anthropic pushes out a new version. But that's okay, because then you're not annoying the developers, you're annoying yourself because you have to go in and stay up to date, which is your job now. And you're not blocking a release. So the second thing is, I think this is on Anthropic, but if you have a secure software policy, this is the level of specificity that like an SSDF PCI is not going to dictate, but you should dictate, right, to your engineers. Is that didn't happen because of simple input validation, simple lack of input validation. Parameterizing that would have solved this problem. Very, very soon. This is coding basics. This is if somebody had taken a secure coding class, which does not exist in undergrad computer science today. That's the first thing you should learn. Right? That's the first thing you should do. The third thing is exception handling. Again, people teach this in coding practices, but not in the context of security, right? Not in the context of input validation. So that's again and it's something it's a corner that gets cut when you're trying to push out production code. So that's the other thing you could ask. So how are you parsing your environment variables? Are you putting input validations for that? How are you doing error handling for these particular commands? And the last one is the one that scares us the most as an AppSec company, is the blind dependency installs. Claude Code, for their, like I've heard Jason Clinton say, dependency management is very important to me. So they do a decent job of it. So perfect example, how many of you are familiar with that NPM worm that just happened? Yeah, the CrowdStrike packages. I know there are a couple of Dune fans here. What is the worm called? So I try to get Claude Code to install Tiny Color 2, which is like a front-end rendering package. I was too scared to try the CrowdStrike stuff. But it didn't. So it told me that this particular version is part of a breach, but it suggested the next available stable version, the patched one. So it's doing a good job, but not necessarily the case with Cursor. I heard a couple of months ago was just blindly pulling in dependencies. That hasn't been fixed. OpenAI, Codex, same thing. I'm hearing that. But this is generally an issue, and I don't know how quickly this comes back to his question about how do these guys keep track of threat intelligence, right? Just that worm, the NPM worm itself, was impacted 187 packages. and the rumor is it's over 500, but let's say it's 187. The next the next one that happens, the next one that happens. You hope they have the best security team in the world to help them with those things. But it's going to be, you all know this is the Cloud Security Alliance shared responsibility model. There is no shared responsibility model yet for this. This is your responsibility because the model will generate the code, but the code that is generated is your responsibility. That includes the dependencies that are pulled in, right? So that's the thing that keeps me up at night. And the thing that really worries me there is a simple check is like, is this piece of code was generated, that code had a library that is vulnerable. What if that library is not vulnerable, but that library calls a library that's vulnerable? Or that library calls a library that calls another library that's vulnerable, that's upstream. These tools can't find it yet. Their security teams can't find it yet. / security review doesn't find it yet. That's what keeps me up. Okay. Now let's see, like, what are some of the developments since we found this a few months ago, like, but Anthropic is very, very particular about their the cool-off period, about how we disclose these vulnerabilities. So I see this as a pat on the back for our researcher that we are allowed to talk about this. Right. It's a compliment to him and his partnership with that team that they trust us to talk about this publicly because they know we're not going to ambulance chase. We're not going to make this about them. We're going to make this about like how we as a community take this into, right, and make it a more secure product. These guys are the good guys. They care about security. They care about AI safety. They care about alignment. They care about mechanistic interpretability. Right? They're not just in it for the money. They're making lots of money while caring about this stuff. So they are they have done a lot to improve on this, even in the last 2 months since we disclosed this. / security - review is one. So if nothing else, don't have budget for you don't have time for a manual code review. You don't have time to buy a code scanner. The simple thing is to run, right? And it's actually pretty good. You can also insert it as a GitHub action. So every piece of code that's committed, every PR that's created, it runs a security check and gives you a pretty good like CSPM SAST type vulnerability analysis in your pull request, right? And then you can choose to fail that build, not fail that build if you have that power, or at least you have that feedback back to the developer. Developers can run that in Cloud Code as well. If you can convince them to do it. Dependency checks, like I mentioned, if I try to pull in one of those vulnerable packages from the recent NPM worm, it'll tell me no, and it'll suggest a more stable, secure version, right? It's pretty good at any of those like known patterns, even like things like, no, I'm talking about security review now. I confused the two. So for security review, any common, anything that smells like a SQL injection, even if a CVE doesn't exist, it'll find it for anything that looks like a deserialization. It's pretty good at data flow, like code scanners, like static analysis scanners, CSPMs are generally not good at, are good at like SQL injections. They're good at finding misconfigurations that are things that are hard-coded credentials, things like that. Anything that requires understanding data flow tends to be like a deserialization, tends to be an issue. This actually does a pretty good job. Question. Mike.
I would object to that because I've used what's it called? SAST, SCA tools, DAS tools for several years, and they do dependency workflows and help determine whether there are vulnerabilities, flaws, and whether those are eventually exposed in through the main index, through the main web page. So they're now just getting into interactive languages and shell scripts as well. And you know, they're a bit different than, say, Claude Code Security Review. Claude mostly uses you know, generative AI to help try to create a table, whereas they're building a dictionary, building an index, which from what I've seen and what I've tested is pretty complete. Okay, and to go further on things like dependency checks, they have a dictionary that maps directly to CVEs. So they have the entire known universe of CVEs for all publicly exposed packages. Number one, and number two, they're now getting into malware scanning as well. I don't know if Claude Code gets into that as well. And, you know, finally, to wrap it all up, I'll just say that the testing we've seen with Gen AI security tools is they're getting there. They're not quite as good as the, you know, the code quality, code smell tools that are out there today. That there's one that controls 80% of the market, as well as the two major SCA tools that are out there as well. But that's today. Tomorrow, they'll probably be, you know,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And agree with you. So the moment you bring dynamic into the picture, there's nothing better than actually testing the build. Because that captures all the data flow issues as well, because you're actually seeing the application running and you're testing the running application.
Yeah, one comment on this, you know, like what he said is exactly right. But there is actually a latency. What I've seen, you know, for example, take the Veracode. You know, if there is a vulnerability, they found it today, it takes them for at least 3 months to get it into their product, actually, whether it's a SaaS or a DAST. That's my observation. But these open source things, they can get it probably the next day. Because I was playing around with like a week ago, Cisco has released a open source framework called CodeGuard, which is pretty comprehensive. It does the input validation, and then it does a like a dependency analysis, and also the output validation. You know, for example, you know, if you have a SQL injection, which was you know, like a 0-day vulnerability, which was found out yesterday, they can get it straight, you know, directly into that. They don't need to productize that. I mean, you know, it can get into their repository as a, you know, so in that way, I mean, obviously, you know, I agree with you that it's like it you know, it becomes like a comprehensive framework, or a kind of integrated framework, you know, one shot, you know, like one button push kind of a situation. But you know, that sometimes 3 months is kind of too late, you know, especially when you are on the rapid you know, fire chat kind of an implementation, especially on the AI. So
that is slow, because to your point, it's an API call now.
Yeah.
It should be it. Yes, exactly.
Right.
We do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. But you know, for them to integrate into their product, you know, for example, let's say Veracode, I don't know like who's your vendor is for SaaS and DAST.
We should be taking a look at code quality, not security code quality. Code quality, because security is an aspect of quality.
Yes.
And the one that controls 85% of the market is SonarQube.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah,
They do it
That is
within
exactly what I
30
was
seconds,
referencing.
60 seconds.
Exactly what.
Yeah, it's easy to use, and you know, like a one push button or whatever that you know, you call it. But yeah, obviously you'll be missing some. Yeah,
It's low hanging fruit, but I'm excited because Forward Security Review is really their first foray into productizing anything security related. and this is going to be a push for them. And these are like, in terms of concentration of talent, the best engineers in the world. Curious to see where the market is like even a year from now in terms of like, the security products market, given that these guys are entering. Oh, they'll catch up. 100%. Like, that can do 80% of what SonarCube SaaS can do. Yeah, it is. All right. So I told you there'll be something about threat intel. So the model card and their blog is probably their best place. I'm happy to share it with Lido and Jackie, and they can share it with all of you. There are two blogs that they follow. There's the threat intel blog on how they use Claude to run investigations for clients. And there's some amazing, they just uncovered like a North Korea drug ring. It's just some amazing stuff they do there with that. And then their own internal security team's blog as well. I would encourage you to follow both along. Ooh, I don't know. They might. I'm sure they're working on productizing that and selling that. I'm 100% sure they're working on that. I'm going to ask Jason Clinton that question next time I see him. Okay, so what about the others? Before I move on, any other questions? How are we on time? Okay. All right, so I'm going to wrap up very, very quickly, but I'll just touch on the others. This is, as of 2 weeks ago, things changed widely, so I didn't get a chance to look at what the latest ponage for Cursor is, but I had somebody at a last presentation in OWASP LA come up to me from Microsoft Security Research and said, like, yeah, we just found that same VS Code extension issue on the Microsoft Copilot side, on the Microsoft VS Code side, like native VS Code, not just the extension to Cursor. So there's some issues there. I think thankfully they've gotten rid of YOLO mode. Google has some issues, just like the Claude.md file I said was a large prompt. You know, they given an LLM is reading everything that's in the code repository, anything can be treated as a prompt. And you can do a prompt injection. You can put in a malicious prompt to do interesting things. Google's a solid security team as well, so they jump on the stuff when they find it. And I haven't used. Has anyone used Gemini CLI? I haven't. So I don't know what their sandboxing looks like. But and then Codex seems to be the most is getting the most adoption in the last 6 months, but is the least worried about security, and that's the one owned by sir. Yeah. Today, right? Oh, yesterday? Oh, did you try it, Atlas? Oh. That scares me. That is a whole other security market waiting to happen, right?
I came out with a browser today.
I'm sorry?
Oh, no, I just
Oh, yeah.
sharing. Yeah.
Sorry, you can elaborate on Atlas, the browser.
It has a codex. It has OpenAI fully integrated, and it's going to kill Chrome because it's doing AI enabled search.
I only AI will use the internet. But it's to answer your question, Brian, it's agentic browser, AI browser that OpenAI released. So it's like ChatGPT in a browser, basically. You can get it to go to websites and do stuff. That's really it. I know I'm. Any questions? Any last questions, sir? Don't know OpenCoder. We're looking into GitHub OS, the OpenAI OSS that was just released. That's our next project.